More than 3,000 years ago, at the foot of a mountain wrapped in fire, smoke, and thunder, a nation stood trembling. They had escaped slavery in Egypt. They had crossed the Red Sea. Now they had arrived at Mount Sinai, where something extraordinary was about to happen. The mountain shook violently. Lightning flashed across the sky. A trumpet sounded louder and louder. No one dared climb the mountain. No one dared even touch it, for the God who had rescued Israel was about to speak. The words he gave that day would become some of the most influential in human history. Known as the Ten Commandments, they have shaped laws, cultures, and civilizations for thousands of years. But behind these famous commandments are fascinating details that many people have never noticed. Let's discover 10 surprising facts about the Ten Commandments. Fact 1. God spoke the commandments before they were written. Many people imagine Moses receiving 2 stone tablets first and only later sharing God's laws with Israel. But the Bible tells a different story. Before Moses ever held the stone tablets, the entire nation heard God's voice. Exodus chapter 20 begins with these words, "And God spoke all these words." Exodus chapter 20, verse 1. The people didn't simply receive second-hand instructions through Moses. They witnessed thunder. They saw lightning. They heard the trumpet blast louder, and then they heard God himself proclaim the commandments. The experience was so overwhelming that the people became terrified. They pleaded with Moses, "Speak to us yourself and we will listen, but do not have God speak to us or we will die." Exodus chapter 20, verse 19. From that moment on, Moses became the mediator between God and Israel. The stone tablets would come later, but the commandments were first spoken directly by God before an entire nation. Fact 2. God speaks the commandments with grace, not rules. Many people think the 10 Commandments begin with a list of demands. They don't. Before giving a single command, God reminds Israel who he is. "I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery." Exodus chapter 20, verse 2. This changes everything. God did not rescue Israel because they perfectly obeyed him. He rescued them first, then he gave them instructions for how to live. The commandments were not a way to earn freedom. They were given to people who had already been set free. Throughout the Bible, this pattern appears again and again. God acts with grace, then he calls his people to respond with faithful obedience. The relationship comes before the rules. Fact 3. There were 2 sets of stone tablets. Few people realize that Moses actually received 2 different sets of stone tablets. After spending 40 days on Mount Sinai, Moses descended carrying the tablets written by the finger of God. But while he was on the mountain, the people had already turned away. They made a golden calf. They worshipped it. When Moses saw their idolatry, he threw the tablets to the ground. They shattered at the foot of the mountain. Exodus chapter 32, verse 19. The broken tablets became a visible picture of Israel's broken covenant with God. Later, however, God showed mercy. He commanded Moses to carve 2 new stone tablets. Once again, Moses climbed Mount Sinai. Once again, God wrote the commandments. The second set was placed inside the Ark of the Covenant, where it remained as a reminder of God's covenant with his people. The story reminds us of something remarkable. Human beings may break their promises, but God continues to offer forgiveness and restoration. Fact 4. The Bible never calls them the 10 Commandments here. This surprises many readers. In Exodus chapter 20, where the commandments first appear, the text never actually numbers them. Instead, later passages simply refer to them as the 10 words. The Hebrew expression is Aser HaDibrot, meaning the 10 words. This title appears in passages such as Exodus chapter 34, verse 28, and Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 13. The word commandments became the common English expression because these 10 statements are commands from God. Yet their original biblical name reminds us that these were not random rules. They were God's own words, spoken directly to His people. Each carried authority. Each revealed something about God's character, and together they formed the foundation of Israel's covenant with Him. The mountains still echoed with thunder. The people stood in awe, but the story of the 10 Commandments was only beginning. In the next part, we'll discover why different Bibles sometimes number the commandments differently, why the Sabbath command is unlike all the others, and what Jesus Himself said about these ancient laws. The thunder over Mount Sinai had faded. The people returned to their tents. But the words God had spoken would echo through history for thousands of years. Generations memorized them. Kings were judged by them. Prophets called people back to them. Even today, the 10 Commandments remain among the most recognized passages in the Bible. Yet several surprising facts about them are often overlooked. Let's continue. Fact 5. Different Christian traditions number the commandments differently. This often surprises people. If the Bible contains only one list of the 10 Commandments, why do some churches number them differently? The answer lies in how the text is divided. The Bible itself never numbers each individual command. Over the centuries, Jewish scholars, Catholics, Lutherans, and most Protestant churches grouped the verses in slightly different ways. For example, some traditions combine the command against worshiping other gods with the prohibition against idols. Others count them as 2 separate commands. Likewise, some traditions divide the command about coveting into 2 parts, while others keep it as one. Despite these differences, the actual biblical text remains the same. No commandments are added, none are removed. Only the numbering varies. This reminds us that the focus should remain on God's message rather than on the numbering system. Fact 6. The Sabbath commandment is the longest. Among all 10 commandments, one stands out. The instruction to remember the Sabbath occupies far more space than any of the others. God says, "Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy." Exodus 20, verse 8. But the command does not stop there. God explains why. For 6 days He created the heavens and the earth. On the 7th day He rested. The Sabbath became a reminder that life is not only about work, it is about worship, trust, and dependence on God. Unlike Egypt, where Israel had been forced into endless labor as slaves, God gave His people a day of rest. Even servants, foreigners, and animals were included. The Sabbath reflected God's compassion and His desire for people to live with balance rather than constant exhaustion. Fact 7. Jesus summarized the commandments in 2 great principles. When Jesus walked the earth, religious leaders often debated which commandment mattered most. One day, an expert in the law asked Him, "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?" Matthew 22, verse 36. Jesus answered by quoting Deuteronomy, Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. Then he added another passage from Leviticus. Love your neighbor as yourself. Finally, Jesus declared, all the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. Matthew 22, verse 40. Jesus was not abolishing the 10 Commandments. He was revealing their foundation. The first commandments teach us how to love God. The remaining commandments teach us how to love other people. Love is not separate from God's law. It is the heart of it. Fact 8. The commandments reveal God's character. Many people think of the 10 Commandments simply as a list of rules, but they also reveal something much deeper. They reveal the character of God Himself. Because God is faithful, He calls His people to be faithful. Because God is truthful, He forbids false witness. Because God values life, He commands, "You shall not murder." Because He is holy, He calls His people to live holy lives. The commandments are not arbitrary restrictions. They reflect who God is. Obeying them was never meant to be merely about following rules. It was about becoming a people who reflected God's goodness to the nations around them. The story of the 10 Commandments reaches far beyond Mount Sinai. Their influence stretches into the teachings of Jesus, into the writings of the apostles, and into the lives of millions of believers today. But two remarkable facts still remain. One reveals where the original stone tablets were kept. The other answers a question people have asked for centuries. Why do the 10 Commandments still matter today?
For thousands of years, the 10 Commandments have been read in homes, taught in churches, and studied by people around the world. Empires have risen and fallen. Languages have changed. Yet these ancient words continue to influence millions of lives. Our final two facts reveal why. Fact 9. The stone tablets were kept inside the Ark of the Covenant. After God gave Moses the second set of stone tablets, they were placed in one of the most sacred objects in Israel's history, the Ark of the Covenant. God instructed Moses, "Then put in the ark the tablets of the covenant law, which I will give you." Exodus 25:16. The ark was a gold-covered wooden chest kept inside the most holy place of the tabernacle. Later, it was placed in Solomon's temple in Jerusalem. Only the high priest could enter the most holy place, and only once each year on the Day of Atonement. The ark symbolized God's presence among His people. Inside it were the stone tablets of the covenant. Hebrews 9 also mentions Aaron's staff that had budded and a golden jar of manna as being associated with the ark's sacred contents. The tablets were not stored away simply as historical artifacts. They represented the covenant between God and Israel. They reminded every generation that God's words were not temporary. They were meant to shape the lives of His people. What happened to the ark after the Babylonian destruction of Jerusalem remains one of history's greatest mysteries. The Bible does not tell us. Many theories exist, but Scripture remains silent. Its focus is not on where the ark disappeared, but on the God whose covenant it represented. Fact 10. The 10 Commandments point beyond themselves. Perhaps the most surprising fact of all is this: the 10 Commandments were never meant to be only a list of rules. They reveal God's perfect standard, but they also reveal humanity's need for His mercy. Throughout the Old Testament, Israel repeatedly failed to keep the covenant perfectly. Again and again, the people turned away from God. Yet God continued to call them back. The prophets spoke of a day when God would establish a new covenant. The prophet Jeremiah wrote, "I will put my law in their minds and write it on their hearts." Jeremiah 31:33. Centuries later, Jesus came not to abolish God's law, but to fulfill it. In the Sermon on the Mount, He said, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them." Matthew 5:17. Jesus showed that obedience is more than outward actions. It begins in the heart. Hatred can lead to murder. Lust can lead to adultery. Pride can separate us from God. The commandments are not merely about external behavior. They call us to inner transformation. Through Christ, believers are invited into a restored relationship with God, a relationship marked by forgiveness, faith, and a desire to live according to His will. The story of the 10 Commandments is far greater than 2 stone tablets on a mountain. It is the story of a God who rescued His people before asking for their obedience, a God who desired justice, mercy, faithfulness, and love. These commandments have shaped civilizations, inspired legal systems, and guided countless people through history. But their greatest purpose was never simply to create order. Their purpose was to point people toward the one who gave them, the God who is holy, the God who is faithful, the God who desires a relationship with His people. Thousands of years have passed since Moses stood on Mount Sinai. The thunder has long faded. The stone tablets are gone. But God's words continue to speak. They remind us that true worship begins with loving God. True righteousness includes loving our neighbor, and true wisdom begins with listening to the Creator. Perhaps that is why the 10 Commandments remain as relevant today as they were in the wilderness. Because while the world changes, God's truth endures, and His invitation to walk in His ways is still open to all who seek Him. The grass withers and the flowers fall, but the word of our God endures forever. Isaiah 40:8.